Welcome to the Holistic Career Change Podcast. Spoiler alert, we don't discuss conventional, linear, boring career change here. This is the place where we talk about finding an aligned career path that feels like an extension of who you are, where you get paid for being yourself. Forget personality quizzes, soul-crushing scrolling on job sites, and breaking your brain trying to find your why. Join me and many other career changers who've changed their career holistically by first defining who they are at their core and then using this blueprint to design a fulfilling career or business. We use the mind-body-soul approach, and we take into consideration the complexity and multidimensionality of all that you are and want to represent in the world. This is where purpose-led careers are born and built. I'm your host, Vilma. Let's go. Hi, everyone. How have you been? Oh my goodness, I feel like I haven't spoken to you for 1,000 years. It's so good to connect. And I feel like I say that at the beginning of every episode, but still, it's so good to connect. I'm bringing you another career change story. I feel like lately I've been focusing on those journeys because I know that they can be so inspiring, and hearing other people who have been in the position that you are in or have been through a similar journey that you're going through is so connecting and so healing. So I'm like incredibly in love with the career change story that I'm sharing with you today. And it's with my client, Julia. And Julia will be sharing today about her years as a registered nurse and how she got into nursing, what every day felt like for her, and how she made a decision to completely pivot, not just in her career, but her life as well. And she will be sharing about how she and her husband ended up moving to Europe and how she had to not just start from scratch in a new industry, but also adjust to a completely different culture and language. She will be sharing how she essentially broke into film industry in Berlin without really speaking the language at first. And she's sharing what steps she took, which eventually led her to a paying job that she has now that she really likes, that essentially pays her to explore all these different departments that she is interested in. And we have just amazing conversations about not just the action she took, but also what a big lesson it was for her during this process to really learn how to connect with her feelings. Because for the longest time, especially when we were surrounded by a lot of fast-moving environments, say nursing is one of them, right? There's a lot of dysregulation that's happening. It's hard for us to feel embodied. So Julia shares what she did to connect more with her intuition, which helped her start discerning what's really hers and what's not. Really take essentially every aspect of her life and start checking in. Is it truly mine, or is it something that I took on because that I thought that's what you're supposed to do? And we also talk about just in general the lessons that she learned, pursuing a new path. And of course, as per usual, Julia is sharing advice to those of you who are still on this path, looking for a career that feels fulfilling, a career that feels like coming back home. Julia shares what a difference it is now to wake up in the morning and be excited to go to work compared to her previous experiences, and how it was really hard for her to even imagine that that is available for people. It's such a unique, beautiful story that I know you're all going to enjoy. So without further ado, here's our conversation with Julia. Enjoy. Hi, everyone. So good to be connecting with you again. And today I have a wonderful guest on my podcast, my client, Julia. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. And thanks, Vilma, for having me on your podcast.
Of course. The pleasure is mine. As per usual, I almost had to. Did I have to talk you into this, or were you kind of okay with it? How did you feel about the podcast?
I'm pretty sure when you first asked me, I was like, hell no. Just like a very much a no. And then by the end of our session that day, I was like, you know what? This would be a good challenge and I should say yes. So here I
Yeah.
am.
Thank you for stepping out of your comfort zone. I'm sure that your story is going to be so inspiring. That's why I really wanted to have you on. It's such an unusual story. So let's start, as per usual, just briefly introduce yourself.
So my name's Julia. I'm 34 years old, and I went from being a registered nurse to now living in a different country and also working in a new industry, which is in film production.
Yeah. That's amazing. I mean, Julie and I were just talking a little bit before recording, and we're going to get in all the details about her transition and everything. I know you can't wait to hear, but she's living, she said, such a like pinch me kind of moment. And one of the reasons why I really wanted to have Julia on is because her story seems unique. And if you will be listening to the story and you will be telling yourself like, oh, this could never happen to me. It only happens to the lucky few. Please know that probably Julia had similar flaws when she was starting her career change journey. There was no way for her to predict that this is how things are going to pan out. And hopefully that is going to be one of the takeaways, Julia, that the listeners will take from the stories to really believe in themselves and keep on trying and put themselves out there. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. So let us start from the very beginning. You started your career, I think, as a nurse, right? So you studied
Mhm.
nursing, you got into nursing. Can you
Mhm.
share a little bit more of that before chapter of your life? How did you get into that? What were you feeling? How did that career develop for you? Just share a little bit more of that world
Mhm.
in the past.
Yeah, I studied something else. I studied international political economy was
Oh,
my
that's
first
true. Yeah.
degree, but then coming out of that, I actually did my thesis project in like maternal health care in developing countries, and I kind of grew this interest in health sort of through that in a different way. And I left that program feeling like I just really wanted some hands-on skill set. Um, and so then my interest in medicine kind of came from there. And I was also it kind of influenced by the people around me at the time. I was dating someone that was going into medicine, and
Mm.
that kind of influenced my way of thinking about it. And they kind of kept saying how good nursing, like a career nursing is. And yeah, so I think those kind of combination of things, I had some of my own interests, but then the community that I had at the time kind of pushed me in this direction. So I worked as a nursing assistant for 4 years while I was taking classes and working on getting into nursing school. And then graduated from nursing school and worked as a registered nurse for 6 years.
Wow.
Um, so total of 10 years about in healthcare.
Wow. I say that sometimes to people when I read your energy, and I think I told you that several times. I'm like, as an intuitive, when I read your energy is so I still had to remind myself that you were a nurse because I feel like with your energy is so misaligned. I feel like like
I
I'm
wish I'd
reading
met
it.
you. I wish I'd met you so long ago, 12 years ago, Vilma. I needed you
I
to
was just
tell
like
me.
when I was like whenever you would mention nursing, and I would almost need to be like, oh, that's right, you were a nurse. Oh, that's right, you were a nurse, because I felt like it's just you have such a different, like creative, free spirited, intellectual energy. I can't find the words to describe it. But the fact that you need to remind me that you were nursing and you were actually what units were you in? Can you share a little bit more? And what is nursing
Yeah,
assistant, by the way? What is a nursing assistant?
nursing assistant's like a helper for the nurse. So it's kind of like an entry level job that a lot of people
Okay.
do who are maybe working towards becoming a nurse, or for some people, it is their full career.
Yeah.
Um, but for me, it was kind of just how I got started in medicine, working while taking classes and going to school.
Did you
Um,
have some red flags or question marks just by being a nursing assistant? 4 years is a long time. Like,
yeah, for sure. There was a lot of days that I hated it, and that
mm,
should have been a really clear sign. But I kept thinking that when I was a nurse, it would be so much different. It would be better. It'd be a different sort
oh,
of role because it is a very different role. Um, and that I would have more autonomy and more say in my practice, and the pay would be better, and all these things. So I kind of stuck to that path, even though there were some like early warning signs, I guess. Um, but also, it was just really me in my like early 20s, like adulthood, figuring out how to be an adult, get on my own 2 feet, become financially stable. And I have to say, like, I am super grateful for my previous career for giving me that,
Yeah.
you know. It wasn't all bad. And I grew a lot, and it was a lot of stability for me. So even though it was super misaligned, like it gave me a lot of good things too.
I love
Yeah.
that you're in such a beautiful space of acceptance, because I think it's so easy to be jaded and frustrated and resentful sometimes when we leave misaligned places or when we're reaching burnout as well. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for people to sometimes see the bright side. But obviously, now I think it's been some time since you've been in nursing. So I love hearing how you are grateful, because to your point, every career we go into, I think it serves us to a point. The
Mm-hmm.
question then is like how to not overstay and find a more aligned option, which I think is usually the hardest piece.
Mm-hmm. And I think even once I was a nurse, it was kind of the thinking stayed the same. I was like, maybe this just isn't the right type of nursing. Let me try a different type. And then
Mm,
I was like, let me try a different hospital environment, you know? So it was still kind of like always seeking a different like angle at it,
yeah.
to see if I could figure out what felt right. So I started out at like a public trauma hospital. It was like a really big, busy hospital on a trauma med surge floor. It was super fast paced, you know, 1,000 things going on at once. And I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about nursing, and the whole time that I was there, I was kind of like, this is giving me a good skill set, and then I could take that to another type of nursing. Like I kind of
Mm-hmm.
knew from the beginning I didn't want to stay there, but it was a stepping stone. And then I moved into psych nursing and patient psychiatry. And that was more aligned for me in that I really do care about mental health. It's something I'm really passionate about. Um, and so that's kind of why I took that direction. Um, but then even working in psych, it was still like the burnout feeling was always there.
Yeah.
And there were more negatives than positives for me. And I ended up feeling like I just wasn't being myself when I was at work.
Yeah.
Like I felt like a different person, and I'd have to put on like a mask or like a different personality to show up and be so extroverted and have to interact with so many people, and also have to do these sort of tasks and the work that was required of me in that role. It just really felt like I was being a different person than who I was at my core.
Yeah.
And I think that just started really wearing on me and exhausting me. And, you know, I think everybody knows that nursing is not an easy job. But it's not like I don't mind the hard work part of it so much. It was more the part of it that didn't feel like I was being true to myself and who I was.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, it's like hard to choose what angle to talk about it because there's a lot of different things
Yeah.
going on. Yeah.
I was wondering also, just we don't need to go into too much detail, but I know that you're very sensitive.
Hmm.
And then you having to pretend to be essentially someone who you're not. Like, I know how taxing that
Yes.
is. That is
Yes.
like
Yes. Yeah.
so taxing, right? So, for my understanding or like assumption, is that you were probably living in a lot of that like nervous system dysregulation or like either
Totally.
anxiety or like what was your reality? How did you feel?
Definitely. Yeah. I am a very empathic person and very sensitive person, and I took on a lot of other people's emotions,
Yeah.
both in the trauma floor and working in psych. You know, it's a lot of people's worst time in their life being in the hospital or whatever's going on. It's some of their worst days of their life, potentially. And there's a lot of stress that they have. Sometimes they take it out on staff, sometimes just whatever's going on in their life that brought them to the psych ward, like as a nurse, you're taking some of that on. And for me, I started to notice like my coworkers that really loved nursing and like they could just, it seemed like wipe that off at the end of the day, like brush off those feelings and that stress. And like for me, I would take it home. I would think about it. I would think about like what patients told me. And I really was like more of a sponge and absorbing a lot of the emotion that was going on at work. So I think that in that way, I also started to feel like I was numbing myself out. Like I almost had to be numb to survive in that job. And I didn't like that feeling. I didn't like that that was happening. I was like aware of it, but like I didn't see any other way really to, and of course I had boundaries with patients. It makes me like it's not like I just let people walk all over me and like you have boundaries, but even still, I just felt like I was absorbing so much of what was going on, people's pain and struggle. And yeah, so I think that just wears you down. And for me, I was kind of numbing myself out and feeling, jaded and all these things that just felt really, really bad on like a cellular soul level. Mm-hmm. So I knew for a while that I wanted to leave. It was just like how to do that. What do you do once you leave? All those big questions. And yeah, like I had a lot of barriers in my mind about the possibility of leaving and judging myself for like, okay, I went to school for this. I went into student debt for this. I paid off my debt. I worked hard to pay off my debt, and like, I shouldn't just throw this away, So yeah, it's a hard decision to leave. It's really hard.
How did you make that decision? Because when you came to the process to work with me, you already had left, right? So you made that decision on your own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I'd known for a while, and really the decision coincided with me and my partner's decision to move abroad. So it was kind of like, I hate to say it this way, but like an escape hatch for me. Because I was like, yeah, this is my way to leave my career.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we as a couple, we'd wanted to move abroad for a while and had kind of in the back of our mind been planning it. And it's not an easy thing to make happen. But we finally got more serious about the planning. It's like things like COVID hit, and it's like, okay, is this ever going to happen? And then, we decided just to basically cut the cord.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just do it, quit our jobs. And he started applying for jobs abroad. We decided to take like a little time off, do a little travel, see some family. And in that time, he was going to be applying for jobs abroad. And then he got a job he was super excited about in Berlin, and we made the move. It's a lot to happen at the same time.
Lots to happen. And you and I spoke about this, right? That for you, it was not just you trying out a different industry, it was also moving a country because everything was new. And a lot of the times, probably spoke about this on the podcast, and I tell it to my clients, if you are going into some sort of change, sometimes pacing yourself is good, meaning maybe don't get a divorce and change a career. Maybe don't like move a house and sell a house and start a new career. For you, it was just that it was stars aligned, and I think it worked out for the best, but also it was a big undertaking. I wonder that in the moment when you were in that, did you realize how big this is, or were you just sort of in the trenches, kind of taking it day by day?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I was just so relieved by the idea of leaving what I was doing, because this was also like, remember this was nursing in COVID times too. So it was like I already wasn't super happy with my job, and then COVID hit, and it became a hell of a lot harder and a hell of a lot more scary and intense and all the things. And so I was just like ready to go. We'd been saving money. I'd been like, just like almost every day when I go to work, I'm like, I'm just making a paycheck to save it so that I can leave. Like that was my mentality for like probably the last year of my job, which is, not, I also cared about my patients and like did a good job, but like I just had that in the back of my head, like I am just doing this to like build so that I can leave.
When you came in and then we started the blueprint process very early on, I even remember actually that session was when you were like, so I know that we're starting to do some analysis and have conversations, but I kind of was wondering if I should also invest some time into some of the projects, creative projects that I've been interested in. And do you think that would be a good idea to do it now? I even remember we spoke about it. So I was like, 100% like go all in, play with it, test it out. We want to do as much as possible. Talk to me a little bit about what these projects were and like, have you always been interested in like in art or that creative self-expression? What was happening there? That you already were pretty certain you definitely want to test it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like as a teenager, I felt pretty creative and artsy and like was really drawn to music and some different creative things, but I never really used to take it seriously. Like I never really thought it was like a direction. And I think I even like judged like I had some guy friends that like wanted to be musicians, you know, and I kind of always like in the back of my mind was like, yeah, but it's not going to happen, you know, or like, so I definitely had some judgments even from an early age about going into any sort of creative career. So I didn't really give myself that space to take it seriously.
Was it your judgment? Sorry to interrupt you. Do you think, was it your authentic judgment? Could it have come from the family?
Oh, for sure. I'm sure it came from other places. Yeah, family and yeah, other people in my life that probably said things like that. Yeah. And then it was probably about, I mean, it was quite a while that I started doing some photography work, like, while I was being a nurse, like one of my outlets was my dad gave me his old analog camera and I started having a lot of fun just like going out and shooting with that, and then got more interested in like making like photography projects for myself and like trying double exposure or like experimental film. I had some friends let me take like portraits of them and things like that. So I kind of started getting into photography just as like a hobby. And then I started making some films with kind of like travel vlog style of like me and my partner when we'd go on trips, camping trips, hiking trips. I'd like make little videos and edit them and put them together, not really to distribute anywhere like publicly, but just like share them with our friends and family and just like for ourselves to have. So that kind of, I got into editing and was like really liked doing the editing process and putting these clips together. Yeah, so I think that's kind of where it started. And then when we met, I'm trying to remember if I was already I joined like a film community online called Film Sprint, which is a great little community where we'd like make short films in like a short amount of time and then show them to each other and give each other feedback. So I did some like events with them and some films with them. And maybe I think that's right around when we started meeting up.
Yeah.
And then I did the music video.
Yeah, music video. You were in a competition as well. Was it before?
Yeah, the competition was with Film Sprint. Yeah. That was, and it was so encouraging to be part of these little film communities when they're like, oh, like we really liked this thing that you did. And like, it just really can fuel you to feel like, okay, someone liked something that I did, you know?
Yeah.
And it feels like a safe, small space to share and express yourself. So that was really, shout out to Film Sprint.
And I think that's a really good idea in general for people who are exploring other maybe paths, right? Because back then you didn't really know you wanted to do that, right? It was just a creative project and a little bit of self-expression. And joining these small communities of like-minded people who are interested in the soul of the craft or whatever it is that you do, I think it could be very healing, especially because you did get some positive feedback. So I think that kind of inspires people to explore more and go further, I would imagine.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And it inspired me so much that I thought that I could make my own music video.
I love that. I loved your music video.
Oh my God.
I feel like that was such a long time ago. It wasn't that long ago. So talk to me about the video. So basically, what was happening, just to give some context to the listeners, I think we were working on the blueprint, and also Julia was sort of starting to explore more and more all of these creative aspects of filmmaking. she did short films, and then she had an opportunity to work with a musician and kind of collaborate with someone and create a music video. So basically, as we progress with our process, she was also making sure that she's taking action and trying out all of these different aspects that she felt called to check out. So share
Mm-hmm.
about the music video, please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the music video was with a family friend of ours who's like a singer-songwriter in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. And we just met up for a coffee and like talked about some ideas, and he was really stoked on the idea of making making a music video. And I told him like, listen, like I have no experience really, like but like I'd love to give it a shot, and like I'll try my best, to make something that looks okay. And yeah, he was down. Like it was obviously unpaid, and I was like, just kind of for us to both learn some things. And then I went on Facebook and kind of went to some groups to try to see if I could get pull someone else in that actually knew what they were doing a little bit more than I did. And I found Paula, a girl who had just finished like a media arts program, and she had a little bit of a nicer camera and was down to join us and help out. So yeah, we had some like planning meetings and did a little like location scouting and figured out what we would need and dates that worked. And we shot a music video for 2 days outside with like no lighting knowledge or any lighting equipment, with like an iPhone on a gimbal. And then she had like a Sony, a little bit of a nicer camera. And tried to shoot everything at golden hour just to get the best natural light that we could.
Smart.
And yeah, then we, her and I together edited this music video, put it together. And in the end, the musician was super happy with it. He's like very proud of it. And that's so I felt like at the end of the day, that's really what matters, is that like he liked it.
Yeah. 100%. How did you deal? Because remember we spoke about it in the coaching sessions. How did you deal with, and moving forward in other situations, with that sort of overwhelming, sometimes imposter syndrome of like thinking that you're moving into something and you literally have no idea what you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
What was your? Because I know a lot of people will deal with that.
Yeah. I mean, with film specifically, I have the thought of like, it's such a spectrum of like what is making a movie, right? Like I think doing things like Film Sprint helps me get this mindset. It's like you can literally take your phone and record some clips, put it together on a free editing program and make a movie, like there's a whole spectrum. And then to thinking about like cinematic filmmaking where you have like huge crews and all this stuff. So that's how I thought about it in my head, was like, you can make anything in between, and it's legitimate. I'm not going to oversell myself. I'm never going to lie and say like I have experience when I don't. But, it doesn't hurt to say like, I'll give it my best shot and I'll try, and that's what I did with the musician. I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but like, I'll give it a shot.
I love it. I love your honesty. I do remember speaking about it when you were really concerned that they may have expectations. And I think we used to speak about it, is like, if you are honest with them from the beginning and say like, listen, I'll give it my all, I do not have a lot of experience, then it's their decision. Then you don't have to worry about, do you know what I mean? Like, obviously you're still going to do your best, but you don't have to worry about like disappointing them or them having sort of, out of expectations that are too big, right? And but it's still, I think we need to go through that experience. And I think that piece, like what I just asked, imposter syndrome, is that first obstacle, the big wall that some of the people, that's why they crumble and they never get over it, just because that fear of like showing up like they don't know what they're doing, or maybe perfectionism, or being afraid to make a mistake, whatever it is, no matter how broad and ambiguous, like you said, the movie world is we still have those patterns of, especially when we're at type A and we like control. Getting over that, I know how terrifying that is. Not terrifying, but more like hard, because it's so deeply ingrained within us.
And I think there's some benefit to that naivety too. Like when you don't know as much as like I know now about filmmaking, because now I'm like, there's no way in hell I could make a music video by myself. What was I thinking? That's crazy. Like I wouldn't do it. And it's so funny that like, not so long ago, I was like, yeah, just take your phone and go out and make a music video.
I love that. Never
Yeah.
lose that. Like to all of you, never lose that like naivete about doing something new. That's called unconscious incompetence. Where like I don't even know what I don't know. Therefore, let me just give it a go because I'm not aware
Hmm.
maybe how like inappropriate or simple this is. But anyway,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
love the story. Let's move on sort of to Germany. So you moved to Germany, found an apartment, was the whole thing about that, right? And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think at this point, what we were starting to realize that was that movie like movie industry, film industry in general was interesting to you. You were like,
Hmm.
I think there's something there for me. I love the creativity. I love script writing. There are so many aspects that I love. But then I think we were facing another dilemma, which is like, but what do I like the most? And how do I niche down, or do I niche down at all? And I feel like I'm
Hmm.
lacking that experience, right? So I think then, as opposed to maybe we could talk about it here, because I think a lot of the times when people are moving into a new industry, they think about school. So, filmmaking schools, film schools are a thing. Did we
Hmm.
ever consider that for you, or did we instantly just say,
Not really. Like, I mean, of course I thought about it. I remember researching like film schools in Berlin and things like that. But never seriously. Like, I never really went seriously down that path because I knew that I wanted to just see what I could do on my own, getting some experience
yeah,
first. Because I wasn't even sure if, like, I still had those like negative thoughts about like, this a real job? Like,
yeah,
like I didn't know that I even really if I was sure about it, so
yeah,
I just wanted to kind of dip my toes in and start getting some experiences first.
yeah.
Yeah.
I love that, and I usually like I'm a big fan of that, which is like dipping your toes in the water, getting practical experience, understanding what the work or the industry is about. And only when you really feel like, and we'll talk about feeling things out, when you feel like that's the right thing, then think about investing the money, committing to a program because you feel like you're maybe lacking, or you want to get better with specific areas, or maybe you do want to choose a specific department. So when you came there, you knew no one, you
Hmm.
barely spoke the language. Did you speak any German when you?
No, like I literally when we the first time I was like, how do you say please? Like
I love
I
it.
didn't know anything. I remember and I was like, I could do Duolingo beforehand. I was like, I'll just learn it when I get there. I feel like it was going to be some easy task. It's not.
Yeah,
German's a very hard language.
it's such a hard language. Oh my goodness. You chose like the hardest, probably European language, I think.
Yeah, it was really stupid.
It's like the
Not a
hardest,
good decision.
as hard
Yes.
as they get. Anyway, so you came in here, you're wanting to explore a new industry, you don't speak the language. Obviously, it's Berlin as capital, so a lot of people speak English, but still a
Hmm.
lot of people choose
A
to
lot of
speak
people
German.
don't. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So talk to me about that experience and tell me how you went about it, like exploring the industry, getting used to the culture. Like, what was that like for you?
Hmm. Yeah, I think the first month, it's kind of like your honeymoon phase. You're like, I'm in a new country, everything's new and exciting and shiny. And like, but then very quickly that starts to wear off and you're like, oh, I need to like learn this language. And, I'm in language classes and it's not like it doesn't just click and you learn German, it's like it takes a lot of practice and time. And yeah, so it was hard. Like I definitely went through a phase where I was just like, what the heck am I doing? I would say generally I don't recommend to people listening out there to do a huge career change and move across the world, like halfway across the world at the same time. It's a lot of change. It's a lot of new situations. But the benefit that did have looking back on it now is that I was very outgoing, like I kind of
Mm,
had to put myself out there because I didn't, everything was new, everything was a little bit uncomfortable in some way, not knowing if the person I walk up to is going to speak my language, if I'm going to be able to communicate with them or not. And it's a new place, a new culture. So everything was kind of in this like uncomfortable state that I felt like I just had to go out and try things and meet people. And I think that kind of energy, being in such a new environment, propelled me to be more outgoing with seeking like film opportunities. So pretty much like right when we arrived in Berlin, I was like on Facebook film communities, looking up opportunities, reaching out to people to see if, any films out there just needed a set of helping hands, like just saying like, hey, I just moved here. I'm trying to change careers and get a little bit of a taste for the film industry here. Yeah, so I was just like putting out messages and getting on student films and low budget films. And yeah, and that was actually a really great experience. And I felt like every project that I went on, I was learning something new. And also it was helping me just build my confidence with putting myself out there, making connections with people. And the funniest thing is like the very first project that I was on when I came to Berlin, it was a student film project. That's the project that landed me with a job later on. So it's like so funny how that kind of circle of how the world works,
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. So I think what you did, you had such a great like attitude to be open and to explore and put yourself out there. And I remember we used to have those conversations where you're like, well, there is this opportunity to volunteer or whatever, but I don't think they speak English. And there are going to be so many awkward moments where maybe on a break I'm just standing there and I can't communicate. Talk to me how you overcame that, or were you just like gag and go? Like I'm scared and I just need to do it anyway.
I'm scared and I just need to do it anyway. Yeah, I think that was kind of the mindset. And like, sure, there's tons of moments where they're speaking German and I don't know what's going on set, and I'm new here and I don't know my way around set so well,
Yeah.
But I just, you just kind of like, I guess, don't take it personally and just like have a good attitude and try to be helpful and hardworking and friendly. And that goes a long way. Even in situations where maybe there's a language barrier.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that was what was seen.
Yeah. Because I think when we talked about last session, you said that you didn't even apply, like you applied for positions that you didn't get, but most of the jobs that you got here in Berlin were like through people basically recommending you to their colleagues, right? Because you probably made an impression or had a good attitude that's how you would end up landing projects.
Right. Yeah, it starts, I think that's really what a lot of the world runs through, is through connections and networking and getting to know people, and then they'll pass jobs on to you. And I was surprised how much that was happening. Like after one project, I'd get like people would actually reach out and be like, oh, my friend has a project if you want to do this, or and I was always also on like, again, these Facebook sites, and there's also a site called Crew United in Germany that's for film. Like always just looking through and seeing what opportunities and emailing people, just cold emails, and being real about my experience level being very low, and this is who I am. And
And so I love that. So I think that's big advice for those of you who are thinking of like breaking into a completely new industry that you have no experience in. We think that is hard. And yes, of course it's hard. Julia had also very hard moments, and probably there were many, many moments of desperation and like, what am I doing here? Right. But also like having the right attitude, and I always used to tell her is that your attitude and you being so friendly, so helpful, so receptive, so sensitive, so empathic is what is going to always leave an impression on people so much more than necessarily your like technical knowledge or things like that, because we are human beings, we're social animals, right? Like we always want to be around people who are nice to be around, even at work, right? And if you're nice, if you're helping them, they will want to help you back. And so I think that was a big piece that a lot of us can take away, Julia, from your experience, is just like putting yourself out there, even when you're afraid, even when you can't speak the language. And I think that yielded these results. And we'll talk a little bit more about where you're at now. Sorry, did you want to add something?
Well, one thing that I remember you telling me is about like connect on a human level first. Like don't worry about not knowing the technical film language, or no, it's like connect with people as humans, because that's really what people want, is just to be seen
Yeah.
And that like, so many little tidbits that you've told me throughout our time working has like stayed in the back of my head. And I'll go back to that if I'm like, just connect as another human to someone, and that goes a
Yeah.
long way.
Yeah, because when we're overthinkers, a lot of the times we're like, oh, do I ask them about the camera or do you know what I mean? Like we start
Mm-hmm.
overthinking how to start a conversation where it's
Mm-hmm.
just as simple as like, hey, how are you? And really mean that question, not
Mm-hmm.
just being polite about it. Sometimes it goes the long way. And I think like another experience that I want to sort of, or aspect of your journey that I want to emphasize is that how open you were exploring all of these different departments within filmmaking, right? So prop master and lighting and camera, now doing post production. Like there are so many different aspects that I even didn't know. I actually learned through you, Julia, like about all of these different departments and how open you were to try. Because one of the questions that I would usually ask you when you were having experience is, how did it make you feel? Like, did you feel good? Did you feel energetic? And it was not always a straightforward answer for you. So, can you share a little more about that experience, connecting with your feelings and kind of trusting what you're feeling? Because I think your head would get in the way and it was sometimes hard for you to discern what's yours,
Mm-hmm.
what's not.
Yeah, I remember at least a few times in our sessions when you'd ask me like, but how did you feel doing this job or working that? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, I was very disconnected to how I actually felt, like in my body, or like, did I even like doing that role or not? Like, so, and I think that kind of comes back to like my overall journey and like self-growth journey is being in touch with myself and my listening to my internal dialogue and listening to my feelings and my intuition. And that's still like definitely an ongoing journey,
Right.
but even you like prompting me to think about that was helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think sometimes, I think for so long in nursing, I also just like shoved that down,
Yeah.
and was just like, this is what I need to do. This is my job and this is what I should be doing. And like it, of course, it's uncomfortable and I don't like it and it's hard work and like blah, blah, blah. But like, this is, what I need to do to be stable. Yeah. So I think I was pretty disconnected from knowing how it felt to do these different jobs. But like writing, so sometimes I would just like write out, like reflections. Like I know sometimes I sent you reflections from after a day on set and be like, oh, this part was fun, but I didn't really like doing this. And, I was really tired at the end of the day, but, maybe it's just because I didn't sleep enough or,
Yeah.
but even just thinking and reflecting on how did I feel doing these things. I mean, at first it was also just like, what can I get?
Yeah.
Like obviously it's like entry level. It was a lot of like set runner, production assistant. I kind of wound up in art department somehow. Like I had a student film role doing art department assistant, and there was parts of it I really liked. It's like so art department is like finding props and helping with set design um and I really had fun like kind of flexing that creative side of me, but it was never really what I intended to go into, or it was more just what was made available to me. And then the first like paid job that I got here in Berlin was also in art department. So it
Mhm.
was kind of like, okay, I'm doing art department now.
Yeah.
But what I like about film, and this is what I'm realizing, is like it's actually really beneficial to have experience in lots of departments.
Yeah.
And I think for a while I was kind of struggling with like, no, I should know what direction I want to go in film. Like I should be like certain I want to be a producer or like, and then just like go towards that and only work in production jobs. And I felt kind of weird that I didn't have a really strong calling in one direction,
Yeah.
because it made me wonder if it was even the right field for me, even though, because I had so many, I was like, well, I'm interested in writing, I'm interested in camera, I'm interested in like, there was more like, what wasn't I interested in film?
Yeah,
Like there
like
was so
yeah,
many
it's true.
different,
Like pre-production, lighting, post-production, like literally you were interested
yeah,
in everything.
so many different parts. I was like, well, I could see myself doing that, or like, that sounds interesting. Um, Yeah. And so, and I think I'm at a point now where I've accepted that that's okay, that I just
Yes.
am interested in a lot of different departments, and
Yeah.
getting a little bit of experience in many things is actually really beneficial. And I don't have to have a certain direction right now that I'm going in.
Mm.
And I feel like it's
Oh,
just been recent that I've like felt that and really believe it now, you know?
yes. Amen. Like this is so good. I want to like put it on the loop for a lot of people is like not necessarily knowing or like going down the specialist route like we were told to do is actually so healing and so useful for many people like yourself who are like multi-passionate and have a lot of interests, but also actually turns out is good for your industry as well to have that varied experience. And to your point, like at first you maybe had that thought or you wanted to believe that, but now it's actually a lived experience where like, oh no, I can see how me having had those experiences and continuing to have those experiences probably is going to serve me long term.
Hmm. Yeah. And when I think about it, like some of the directors or people in my company even that I admire the most, like know a lot about a lot of different parts of filmmaking, you know?
Yeah.
And so I see that and I'm like, okay, it's actually good to get a varied experience,
Yeah.
you know, try a little bit of everything.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't
I love
commit
it.
to one direction necessarily early on. I mean, there's challenges to doing that for sure, you know, because like I don't feel like I am gaining a super specialized base of knowledge in one direction right now, but it's building, you know, and it builds on each other. And it's like
Yes.
in the same general category of knowledge too. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm happy with how it's going.
Yeah. It's just like the general direction to your point, like it like all stacks up. And as you are healing your relationship with your body, with your intuition, with yourself, a lot of the times that's the only way for you to start like rebuilding it and trusting yourself was like exposing to things and starting to notice, even if the at first there are very subtle differences of how you feel and how you perceive things. That's the only way for you to reestablish because you've lived in that dysregulation for so long. Of course, you felt disconnected from what you feel because you didn't even know you needed to check in with the body because it was all about, to your point, shoulds and must tos and what's expected of you.
Mm-hmm. Like the
And
logic. Yeah, I was
yeah,
always like, sorry, can you hear that coming through with
I did hear
the
that.
cat? She's getting a little attention starved and like tapping on the
Julia
keyboard.
has the prettiest kitty who always joins our calls towards the end of the session when she needs attention.
Yeah. I feel like it's not just in my career, but it's like kind of who I am and my personality to have like to change a lot, if that makes sense, and
Mm,
have a lot of different phases in my life and
yeah,
things that I go through. And I think I'm finally kind of accepting that about myself
yeah,
and enjoying that part of myself instead of feeling ashamed of it or judging it. Like to your point about the single track that we kind of are told that we should be on, like go to school for one thing and then work in that career and have a long career and be successful in that, you know, that idea is really drilled into us. And I'm like, I think I'm finding like I've always not been a person that's like that. Like I change my interests a lot and what I like to do. But I'm finally like believing like that it's actually a beneficial thing too for me to follow that. And I shouldn't be like feel bad about that or that there's strength and
no, this is just who you are. It's just like self-acceptance.
mm-hmm,
Right. And
mm-hmm,
I think I remember
accepting it
one
about
of the,
myself. Yeah.
yeah, you can fall in love with that, just accept that. Because I remember actually one of the models we ran at the very beginning when we used to run models was about you being terrified of choosing a career path and then changing your mind. Do you remember?
Mm-hmm,
There were like a lot
mm-hmm,
of those unintentional models where you were like, well, what if like it's not it? And we
mm-hmm.
had to work on normalizing it a little bit. So I think you're just naturally now like in a much calmer space about it. And actually, now that I'm listening to you speak, I think that's why film is a broad, in general, is a broad enough um swimming pool lane like we used to talk to give you enough maybe variety to the point where maybe you won't have to change that drastically industries because there's such a big playground between all of these different roles that you can play with.
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought of it like that before. But you're right.
Yeah.
There's like so many different like, I like this. I'm interested in that. Like there's a lot of things to move between. Yeah.
Yeah. And that could still lead you to some sort of career progression and development because you're in the same lane. So there's forward movement versus stopping and choosing something different.
Mhm.
We'll see how, but I think it definitely is aligned for you. Um, Talk to me about the current opportunity that you have, because I'm sure that the listeners want to hear. Because right now you were like, "Oh, it's such a great opportunity that I have because it's a paid opportunity." Tell us more details about what you're doing now.
So I mentioned earlier about the first student film that I worked on in Berlin. That director passed my name on to the company that he worked with, still works for, and then they reached out to me for like a 6 week opportunity, like paid job that I did last fall with them. And I had a lot of fun. I feel like we all really like connected and clicked as a team. And I was just like, at the time, I was just like mind blown that I got any paid opportunity, being so green and new in this industry. Um, and then fast forward, I think so after that project, it was like kind of like winter and holidays, and I went back to the US for some time. And then I got an email that was like the boss of the company like wanted to call me and talk, and he offered me like a full-time paid position with their company for 6 months while they were doing a new production.
Mm.
And I was just like, I was so shocked that that actually would come around, you know, like I
Yeah.
really liked working with them, but I didn't know that I would be offered something like that. So I was really happy and really grateful for that opportunity. And we just recently, like a month ago, wrapped that project. It was like a comedy show that we filmed, and at towards the end of it, he offered to extend my contract another 6 months.
Yay.
So right now, the role that I'm working in is kind of in like a quasi. Is that an English word? They say that in
Oh,
German a lot.
hey, you're the
Quasi.
native.
I was thinking how the Germans say quasi a lot, and I was like,
Well,
I
let's
guess we
just go
also
with
say that
quasi.
quasi. It's like a quasi internship, I guess. But basically, being paid to learn different parts of this production company. We're like a small company, and so it's really hands on. And right now, I'm working in the post production department, doing kind of like editing assistant type work. But also, we have like days where we need help on set. So I've gone and helped with lighting on different shoots that we've done. The series that we just finished filming, I was working as like a lighting assistant in the lighting department. So kind of learning the ropes on that. And then I also helped a little bit with art department, but more started getting into the post-production world. On the days we weren't on set filming, like back at the office, I was helping learn some editing assistant. So now that my contract's been extended, I'm like primarily helping more with the editing assistant type role because we're doing all the post production for that project now. Yeah, and I just love it. Like I don't know, it's fun. It's not the most exciting work. Like probably if my coworkers heard that, they'd be like laughing at me because I'm doing like very basic things. But like I don't know, I'm having fun. I don't dread going to work. And I feel like there's always opportunities to like learn new things every day. And I'm surrounded by people that know more about this than I do, so I can always learn from them. And it's a nice mix of like days in the office, and then there's things that we do where we go out and film things or out on set. So kind of that mix for me is really good. I think if I was like full time always at a computer, I would go a little bit crazy.
Mm.
But having a little bit of a mix where there's also days to go and do things, be on your feet and be more active. I'm really enjoying the mix of working style.
Yeah. And I think that's in alignment again, bringing that up your blueprint, because I think you needed some quiet, more still time where you have more control and you don't mind spreadsheets sometimes and you like organization, right? And things like that. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, you do need variety and movement and creativity. However, if it's either or, like it's not going to feel good for you. At some point, you may end up getting like tired or restless or frustrated, right? But you
Mm-hmm.
have a beautiful mix, because I think you and I spoke about, if you just went for freelance work, which is like really intense hours, a lot of times long hours on the set, and just that for your nervous system would not be very helpful or healing either. So I
Mm-hmm.
think working for a production company like that, I think is like the two worlds kind of collide for you, where you get to experience both.
Mm-hmm. I really like the stability of like showing up to a place where you work every day, not having to like find your own projects necessarily.
Yeah.
And then also having just the same group of people, that you really
Mm-hmm.
get to know. My coworkers, I really love the people that I'm working with, and I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, connection is one of your values as well, I remember. So I think like what's really beautiful, the reason why I love your example so much is that sometimes people will look at industry like film, which is so ambiguous for so many of us who do have not experienced. We're like, to me, like it's so mysterious. However, a lot of the work is freelance, a lot of the work is project based, right? And they would like rule that opportunity out for themselves if they're say interested in film, thinking that, oh, I couldn't just be like looking for projects or creating my own projects, that feels too stressful. But like there are always ways, or there are always like those companies or whatever it is in your industry where you can actually have both, or it doesn't only have to be freelance. And I think for you, when you started, maybe you didn't even know that much that an opportunity like that could exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like I just like tumbled into this amazing thing. And
Yeah.
this is like the pinch me that I'm telling you about, like the
Yeah.
feeling. I'm like, it's hard to believe for me
Yeah.
that this is happening.
Yeah. You created it. And you get, like you said, you get paid to learn more about
Mm-hmm.
film
Mm-hmm.
and decide like how you're going to move forward. So right now in this space, do you see yourself, like do you feel called to continue like exploring film and seeing how you could create, collaborate, participate in this industry?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Like I really like the things that I'm learning in post-production, and it does feel like a more sustainable career direction to go, because set can be like really long hours. It can be quite exhausting. And so I do like this idea of having something that's a little bit more like slower paced, I guess, in some
Yeah.
ways. And but then also having the opportunity, like again, I feel like why this is like a really good place for me right now is like having the opportunity to do a little bit of both and a little bit of being on set too, or doing whatever opportunities come up. Um, and I think for me, what I'm deciding is like how I'm happy with this kind of like more stable piece that's being created in my life now, with my job. But I'm asking myself, like, do I want to make my own projects? And how
Mm-hmm.
would that look? How would I go down that route, to be a little bit more expressive, or doing, making content that feels a little bit more my style, or like my voice,
Yeah.
and in some ways I don't feel like it's an urgent
That's good.
like thing that I need to decide on. It's just kind of like in the back of my head there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of marinating and seeing like
Mm-hmm.
how you,
It's
because also it
marinating.
could be a portfolio, right? Like we spoke about
Mm-hmm.
that for you. It could be you having something more stable, maybe doing 4 or 3 days a week, maybe moving forward, and then having a couple of days just for your creative pursuits. Because there that piece of your design, I think, which is some of the values that you want to represent or talk about, or like the activism piece that you
Mm-hmm.
have, that I think could be beautifully expressed through your own art as well, through your own film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is a piece that's kind of missing in the current job that I'm in.
Yeah.
Um, but it could be definitely reached in other ways or through other projects, like we've talked about, maybe getting involved in documentary projects
Oh
that's
yeah. I'm
content
looking
that more
forward.
aligns with me and that I believe in.
Yeah.
Yeah, or maybe down the road doing some of my own projects too.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're gonna be looking out for your projects, okay? Like I'm gonna share your details in the show notes. So we're definitely gonna be watching this space. Do you have, before we close off, I know that we've been recording for some time. Do you have any sort of, maybe, I don't know, this is my curiosity, like either a fun story, a fun set story, like a random fun set story, or maybe some of the things that you were surprised by when you got into the behind the scenes of like either series that you filmed or are the other projects where like, oh, like that came to you as a surprise?
I don't know if maybe this isn't like a fun set story, but it's more just one of my own negative thoughts I had about film was that like I had a lot of preconceived ideas and like, oh, people that are in film are all like vain or like want to be in front of the camera and like be prima donnas or something like that.
Mm.
And that definitely, that idea has been shattered. Like, I feel like the people I've met in filmmaking, even like with the people I work with now, but also just in the student films I've worked in, are just the most grounded, authentic, down to earth, lovely, lovely people.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and so that's, and I just feel like they're my people somehow.
Mm.
A lovely realization to have and to come
Yeah.
to come to. Yeah.
Isn't it interesting how we have those preconceived notions a lot of the times? I love that this
Mhm.
was your experience. Yeah. Okay. So the final question that I have for you that I ask all career changers is what's the advice you would have to your past self starting this journey and also maybe to other people who are at the beginning of the journey? What would you like to share with them?
So if you're in a similar situation that I was in, where I was kind of just going with a lot of shoulds and not really knowing what I wanted to do, but doing what seemed like the logical thing and the right thing. For me, what was really helpful was just getting in touch with my own intuition and starting to listen to that little voice inside me that's telling me what I enjoy and what things that I like to do, and really fostering that and just leaning into that whenever that like spark comes up, when something feels sparkly, as Vilma likes to say, like following the sparkly feeling.
Yes.
Um, I think that's my biggest piece of advice, because that's kind of led me, just following the sparkliness has led me to where I am now. So that's been huge for me. Yeah.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, other things, doing like something that helped me get in touch with that was doing some of the future self visualization work that we did. Um,
And then you
Started with like, yeah, like I went through a big phase of listening
Yeah, I
to
was about to say you were getting obsessed with future self work. You're like, listen to probably all the future self meditations on
all
Insight
of them
Timer.
that are out there. Yes. Like I started with Vilma's in her podcast, the future self meditation. And then after doing that one a few times, I was like, who else has one? And I was starting to look up, where else can I find these future self visualization guided meditations? And yeah, I just went down a long road with that. But I think it really helps me maybe not always like visualize like what do I look like, or what does my house look like? Some of them are more about that stuff. But for me, it was more like, how do I feel in the best version of myself?
Yeah.
How am I acting? How am I comfortable with in my own skin and confident, and bringing that out? That's what was really the takeaway for me from those.
Yeah.
And there's something really powerful about visualizing those and like journaling about it. And then I think it's like something to reach for and work towards.
Mm. Yeah.
You think of?
I, yes. As you're like sharing the story now in this way, kind of like linear way, are you like excited or like, are you like in awe of yourself a little bit? Like, what's your relationship with the story that you're giving? It's like, this is a journey. Like you've been on a journey. Like you've been through a lot.
Yeah, it's a little bit surreal at times. Yeah, to think of like not so long ago, I was like working as a nurse. I had such a routine. It was super rigid, like going and wearing my scrubs and clocking in, and like just this whole other life that I was living. It's surreal to be in such a different country, in a different career, such a different daily routine, but feeling like I genuinely feel so much lighter and more joyful, and like so much more in touch with my authentic self, than I have in a long time.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. And I feel like it feels like a graduation, like maybe of our journey. Julie is like fighting with her
I'm
cat.
fighting my cat. Sorry, she's getting a little aggressive. I'm gonna move her down. Okay.
I've
Sorry.
seen a kitty like that. Oh my goodness. That's true what they say
Really.
about those ginger kitties. A lot
Mhm.
of fire. So in a way, it's kind of like a graduation, right, of our process of work together. But at the same time, it's just the beginning, for you and like the next chapters in your career. But I feel like to your point, like this journey of connecting to your authentic self will never stop. We will forever be questioning, tuning in, becoming more and more of ourselves. I think till the day we die, hopefully we don't lose this curiosity and this willingness and openness to explore and ask ourselves these questions. So it's like the end, but also the beginning as per usual. And I'm sure that like you will go through many, many other beautiful chapters of like reclaiming, reconnecting, and getting to know your true self even more. And hopefully turning that also into a beautiful career and into some movies and photographs that we can look into and appreciate.
I love that. Yeah, I think another like takeaway for me is just like showing up as your authentic self. Like I do feel like in this process, I feel like I found people that are really accepting of me just for who I am. I'm not trying to be something else. I'm not like I said, as a nurse showing up and to work and feeling like I'm putting on a different version of who I am to do this job. I can just really show up as myself, and that it's being accepted, and even people really are drawn to it. And that's just been like kind of mind-blowing for me on a personal level, as well as like how it interacts with my career.
Yeah. It must be so healing to be accepted like that.
Yeah, it's really lovely. So I'm feeling in a really happy, good place in general.
Yeah, I love that for you. You'll probably be like, catch me next week. I'll still be here.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, listen, life is ebbs and flows, and we know all of my clients know. I show them the pyramid of change the very first session we speak together, we talk when we have the intro session. I say, listen, there will be days when you're top of the pyramid living your best life, and then you'll get triggered and you'll fall and you won't even know what's happened.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, for sure. I don't mean to make it sound like it's all like hearts and rainbows and sunshine. It's like I've had really awful days on set, like really hard days where I'm exhausted and tired and like, questioning it all. Yeah, that's definitely there. But I just feel like overall, this feeling I have is like so much different than how I felt it feels like a previous life that I was living, It will feel like it for many career changes, like that past life to me as well. It feels like it was past life. Right. And sometimes I'll refer to that as past life. It's like in my past life when I worked in finance, I used to do this. So I love this. Thank you so much for coming on, for sharing your journey. I know how beautiful, healing, inspiring is going to be for people, because I don't know if you remember yourself in that quiet desperation where you're like looking around and you don't feel like other people are struggling with what you are struggling with. Because it seems like other people are just better at handling it, or they're just more functional. I don't know what it is, but for some reason, when we're in that space, it just feels like an isolating experience. So hearing other people having experienced that and gone through it and gone through the first hurdle of actually allowing themselves to explore a different career path is so, again, repeating myself, validating and healing and inspiring to be like, well, if she could do it, what if I could give myself that same permission to try? Right. Yeah. And I think thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about it too, and to express myself and be open and vulnerable about it, because I tend to be someone that wants to kind of close it up and shy away from talking about it and expressing myself. But yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful idea that it could resonate with other people out there. And also what you told me, I think in our last session about like, it's like a time stamp of what's going on in my life right now, and something that I can always look back at and know like, this is what was happening right now. Yeah.
And next time you feel bored to share your career change journey, you can just send them to Spotify to listen to your podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
You listen, great. I'm tired, but I have this recording, so please knock yourself out. Okay, Julia, thank you so much. Wishing you all the best on your journey. I know it's just, like I said, it's the end and also the beautiful beginning for you. So hopefully we keep in touch. Thank you so much for your beautiful energy. And to the listeners, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll speak to you soon. Thank you for spending time with me today. If you resonate with this content, please subscribe and leave a little review to put a smile on my face. And if you'd like to take this work further and have my one-on-one support in switching to an aligned career path using my holistic career change method, make sure you head over to the show notes and book your free consultation call. I can't wait to meet you. Have a nice day.